Hi friend, it's story time again. Tonight we're drifting not through dusty pages of conquest, nor a long caravan route shimmering under the Levantine sun, but into something far more tender, far more fragrant. Tonight, if you're willing, you'll step barefoot into the quiet, dawn-minus lit kitchens of an empire that once spanned 3 continents, where secrets stirred in copper pots and breakfast was never just bread and tea, but an inheritance of spice roots, family whispers, and the hush of dawn before the city's prayers began. If you're ready to unwind, maybe press like or subscribe only if it feels gentle and right for you. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it there? There's always something comforting about knowing we drift off together. You and I, wrapped in the same ancient story. Now, let the room grow quiet. Let your breath slow. Let the story begin. Picture yourself, imagine if you will, standing in a kitchen older than your oldest memory of warmth. Somewhere behind you, the stones of Istanbul's back streets are still damp from the night. The air carries the salt of the Bosporus and the secret sweetness of honey yet unjarred. The hearth before you, if you squint, still holds the same fire that once flickered beneath sultan spoons and street vendors' cauldrons alike. The first thing you notice, before any taste or smell, is the hush. The hush of a kitchen before the city's roar. A hush so complete you swear you can hear the soft cracking of last night's embers giving up their warmth for you. Just you, the first curious soul awake enough to reach for a pot of sheep's milk waiting to turn into something more. It's here, in this tender hush, that you find your first mouthful, nothing fancy at all, just a sliver of young, white cheese, cut from a block so fresh its eyes under your knife. They called it BYA's near, though by the time you and I are done here, you'll have half a dozen names for it, each more deliciously untranslatable than the last. Take this piece, don't worry, no one's watching, and taste how simple things can be complicated if you let them. A soft brine, a whisper of the hillside grass the sheep shoot under a dawn you'll never see. And somewhere behind that salt, the ghost of a wildflower meadow that only the shepherd remembers. You chew slowly because there's nowhere to be but here in this kitchen, half dream, half memory. They say the Ottomans took breakfast seriously, though they never bothered to write down the recipes the way they did battle plans or palace intrigues, which means that you, here now, are a thief of sorts, stealing back little pieces of forgotten mornings with every bite. Look around you, the hearth is more than heat, it's a promise that there will always be bread to soak up the cheese, a copper kettle that will soon set out its steam in thanks. A clay jar in the corner holds olives, so dark they shine like wet stones, waiting their turn to stain your fingers and tongue with the brine of 1,000 dawns. If you listen, you can almost hear the soft shuffle of the old woman who keeps this kitchen alive, her slippers whispering against cold tile, her breath a lullaby for every ingredient that might one day feed the sultan or the street boy or you, time traveler that you are tonight. They did tell you it's just breakfast, some bread, some cheese, some olives if you're lucky, and a cup of tea that knows more secrets than your family ever dared confess. But you and I know better. We know this hush before sunrise is where the empire really lived, not on maps nor in marble mosques, but in the way butter melts on flatbread, in the way a mother's hand hovers over a pot, as if blessing it with all her patience. Outside, the city will wake soon enough. Porters will grunt under sacks of spice. Fairies will cough awake on the streets. Calls to prayer will roll down from minarets like soft thunder. But here, you are safe. Here, the first bite is yours alone, a passport stamped only by your tongue and your willingness to believe that once, not so long ago, something as small as a wedge of cheese could hold a whole world's worth of stories. Take another bite, if you wish. The fire's not done yet, and neither are we. Steam clings to your arms as you reach for a battered tin pot, its bottom darkened by countless dawns, just like this one. Somewhere behind you, a chicken murmurs under its breath, more judgmental than you'd expect for a bird that hasn't yet laid today's breakfast contribution. The hearth crackles, spitting little flecks of warmth that catch in the folds of your sleeves. You shift your weight, careful not to burn your ankles on stray embers that drift like tiny fireflies across the floor. In this tiny corner of the empire your corner, the kitchen breathes before you do. You've crushed chickpeas with a stone that still remembers your grandmother's hands, coaxed out the oil pressed from olives traded for stories you'll never hear. A clay bowl sits ready, humming with the promise of garlic and herbs, of stale bread softened in broth until it remembers what it was like to be fresh. There's no rush here, not really. The sun, lazy behind thin curtains, pretends it's not yet time to show its full face. The neighbors, if they're awake, haven't said so. Outside, the street is just dust in the hush of merchants setting out baskets of figs that will bruise long before noon. But here, in this moment, you stir a pot older than your worries and feel, for a heartbeat, like you're refeeding the whole empire with your own two hands. A swirl of yogurt slips from your fingertips, folding itself into warm chickpea mash. Somewhere in the corner, mint leaves sleep on a chipped plate. Soon, you'll rouse them with a pinch of salt, a trickle of vinegar. This is not a feast for sultans, but it's enough to brace your bones against the long morning ahead. And that's all breakfast ever needs, to be warmth borrowed against the cold, softness against the stone. They say in Istanbul's palaces, silver trays drift through gardens of roses and tiled courtyards, bearing bowls of clotted cream and rose jam bright as rubies. They say the smell of cardamom rails the sultan like a second robe, even at dawn. But here in your kitchen, the smell is humbler. Onions, flatbread, the sweet burn of last year's honey scraped from the bottom of a jar. When you tear a corner of bread and wipe the bowl clean, you hold something royal in your hands, if only for a moment. And when you step out at last, breath blooming white in the morning chill, you carry a piece of that warmth under your tongue. Another day waits, carts creaking, children chasing strayed orbs, an empire turning quietly on small, ordinary wheels. You lick the last bit of garlic from your thumb and slip into the hum of it all. Later that same morning, you find yourself drifting past shuttered stalls, just beginning to yawn open. The cobbled path beneath your sandals feels colder than it should, and you tug your shawl tighter around your shoulders, hoping it traps a little of the hearth's warmth you carried out the door. All along this narrow street, baskets appear like mushrooms after rain-woven reeds brimming with dates sticky enough to glue your fingers together. Mounds of pistachios still wearing dust from distant groves, loaves so flat and wide they fold into pockets at your hip. A man with a beard flecked in flour grunts a greeting, half mine is hidden behind stacks of round bread speckled with sesame. He gestures with his chin, as if to say, go on. Tear off a piece if you must. So you do. A warm edge snaps away in your hand, soft crumbs steaming against the back of your wrist. The crust is tougher than you expected, carrying the faint, smoky bite of an oven that has cooled since last night's final loaf. Somewhere behind you, a vendor calls out the price of honey by the spoonful, wild, dark stuff drawn from hives clinging to cedar groves far to the east. He promises you sweetness so thick it could mend a broken mood. And maybe he's right. You linger a moment at his stall, dipping your fingertip in a tiny clay dish, tasting the golden drag of it across your tongue. I'd promise of bees and blossoms from places you likely never see. In the next stall over, a woman unrolls lengths of cheese, the curd stretched and braided into pale ropes that glisten under the morning's uncertain sun. She hums a little tune as she works, a lullaby for curdled milk turned treasure. You wonder if she learned it from her mother, or her mother's mother before that. Some things linger longer than any empire's flag ever will. When you speak your coin into her palm, she presses a sliver of cheese into yours, sharp, salted, crumbly enough to scatter if you're not careful. You fold it into a scrap of bread, the same bread you tore from the bearded baker's pile, and eat it in one soft bite. It's not a meal fit for court poets or palace scribes, but here in the alley where sunlight flirts with the awnings, it's more than enough. In the hush between merchants haggling over eggs and boys thumping down baskets of herbs, you feel the gentle pulse of the city waking up around you. A pigeon hops across your path, dragging a scrap of string in its beak. The string looks suspiciously like something from the cheese vendor's table. You'd laugh, but the bird's already vanished up into the tangled shadows of the roofs overhead, proof that even a humble breakfast can become someone else's good fortune if you're not paying attention. When at last your pockets feel lighter, your tongue coated in salt and honey, you slip into the soft hum of a day that's no longer waiting. Your stomach is steady, your feet know the way home, and somewhere behind you, the market chatters on, weaving tomorrow's breakfast while you walk away with the taste of this morning still tucked safely in your teeth. By now the sun has started its slow, unhurried climb, slipping warmth onto your shoulders just the streets begin to gather their daily course, footsteps drumming on stone. Soft laughter drifting from shaded doorways, the echo of a pot din retrieved with only a muttered curse for company. You move through it all like a thread through linen, trailing the scent of bread crust and beeswax behind you. You find your way next to a courtyard half-minus swallowed by ivy and thyme. Here, under the crooked beams of a low roof, sits a man hunched over an iron brazier. 8 years older than he admits, younger than he looks, face mapped by sun and smoke, hands stained with ash that no soul could ever quite convince to leave. He nods when he sees you, as if you were expected all along. In truth, everyone is welcome at his corner of the world. He lifts a lid from a battered clay pot and releases a sigh of steam that tastes faintly of barley and bone. Breakfast here is not the crisp sweetness of honeycomb or the polished bite of imported cheese here. Breakfast is patient, humble, a thing that must be coaxed into kindness over hours of gentle bubbling. In the pot drifts lamb so soft it could be mistaken for the pulse of the broth itself, tangled with chickpeas that hold their shape just enough to remind you they were once dry and stubborn seeds. He gestures you closer, ladles a portion into a dented metal bowl and passes it to you without asking for coin. No one pays here with silver. You pay with a story. Your own, someone else's, real or borrowed, it matters little. So you settle on the low wall beside him, your knees grazing the warmth radiating from the brazier's coals. And you offer a tale about your neighbor's cat who stole a pigeon so fat it could barely flutter. Short and sharp, the sound crackling into the rafters above like a spark. In return, he hands you a sliver of flatbread baked yesterday and warmed on the coals until the edges char just enough to taste of wood smoke. You tear it into drifting flakes, scooping up broth chipia, a stray shred of lin. The salt settles on your tongue, the heat slides down your throat. There is no hurry here, no reason to rush what little comfort the morning has decided to spare you. Around you, other voices murmur low. An old woman with a wrapped basket explains her grandson's latest mischief. A boy too young for his shadow recounts how he saw a snake curled in the warmth of a baking stone. The brazier listens to it all without judgment, feeding these fragments to the gentle dance of steam rising above the pot. When at last your bowl is empty, you set it down carefully at your feet. You feel the broth lingering on your lips, a soft reminder that sometimes breakfast is not the thing you eat, but the way you are fed, one slow mouthful at a time, in a place where your secrets can breathe with the same ease as the smoke curling into the quiet blue sky above. You stand, brush the ash from your hem, nod a thanks to the man who stirs the pot as if each swirl might catch a piece of the morning before it slips away entirely. He does not speak, only raises his palm in a gesture that could mean goodbye or come back tomorrow. You suspect are the same thing here. And so you step from the courtyard's hush back into the spill of sunlight, your belly full, your pocket empty of stories for now. The street opens wider now, unfolding into a modest market square where baskets lean against doorsteps and fabric awnings droop under the weight of the morning sun. You pause at the edge of it all, half-minus hidden behind a stack of clay jars, letting the scene settle over you like a second skin. Somewhere to your left, a boy no older than 12 brandishes a slender stick at a cluster of hens that have grown too bold for their own good. They scatter around his ankles, feathers catching the gold of dawn like fleeting sparks. He yells something half-minus hearted an order, a promise. Maybe a threat, and the hens ignore him entirely. Such is the arrangement between boy and bird here. Your attention drifts instead to an old man kneeling beside a broad, battered wooden tray. He wears a hat so some-minus bleached it's more memory than cloth, and his hands move with the same tender patience you've come to expect of this place. Piles of tiny, greenish-minus-brown pods, each no larger than the tip of your thumb. Fava beans, some fresh, some dried, all waiting to become something more. He sees you watching and gestures. Just a tilt of his chin that says, well, don't just stand there. So you lower yourself to a crouch. Knees protesting, ankles popping, as he cracks open a pod to reveal its pale cargo nestled like secrets in velvet. He shows you how he does it. A knife, its blade dulled to a polite whisper, slices the beans free. He flicks the empty pod aside. There's a growing mound of these husks at his elbow, green on green like a garden spilled onto stone. You reach for one and he nods. You break it open. Your thumb's clumsy at first, then sure with each split seam. The beans drop onto the tray with the quietest tap. Tap. Tap like rain finding the roof. Nearby, a small clay brazier waits. The embers inside nursed from the same coals you left behind. The old man tosses a pinch of salt into a dented copper pan. Then the fava beans, then a splash of oil that hisses its approval. The smell drifts up earthy, nutty, richer than you expected for something so small and green. While the beans roast, he takes out a small jar wrapped in oilcloth. Inside a handful of dried herbs, crushed into a coarse powder that clings to his fingertips when he pinches it. Thyme, maybe, or marjoram. He sprinkles it into the pan with the reverence of someone scattering offerings to unseen household spirits. Perhaps he is. The sizzling grows softer as the beans take on a gentle char. He spoons them into a shallow dish, sets a wedge of flatbread beside them. No silver fork here, no elaborate table. Just your fingers, a bit of bread, and the soft crunch of the warm beans yielding to your teeth. Each bite is simple, but layered. Salt and smoke and the faint echo of sun still trapped inside the pod's green skin. You chew slowly, letting the warmth bloom behind your teeth before you reach for the next, neither smiling nor frowning. When you glance up to thank him, he only shrugs. This is no gift. Just the morning doing what it must do, feed whoever needs feeding. You help gather the empty pods into a basket bound for the goats that wait just beyond the far wall, unseen but certainly listening. He wraps what remains of the beans in a scrap of cloth and tucks it into your palm. Enough for later, he says without saying it. Enough to remember this moment when you stand somewhere far away and wonder if any of this was real. You rise, knees stiff again, shoulders warm from the creeping sun. The boy and his chickens have vanished. The square hums with new voices, new trades struck over handfuls of coins and nods of trust. You slip back into the slow drift of the street, fingers curled around your parcel of warm beans, carrying a piece of this quiet, enduring breakfast with you like a soft stone in your pocket. Your steps carry you away from the market's gentle chatter, down a narrow alley where the shadows linger longer, grateful for the walls that hold back the rising sun. The smell shifts damp stone, crushed mint underfoot, a hint of something sweet curling through the air like a question waiting to be answered. You find its source not in the grand bakery with brass-handled ovens, but at the threshold of a low-roofed courtyard, Inside, a woman stands over a stone slab slick with water and flour. Her sleeves are rolled, her wrists dusted pale. Her hair, streaked with silver, is tied with a strip of cloth that once was white but now carries the story of 1,000 mornings just like this. She glances up when she feels you at the threshold, her eyes narrowing not with suspicion, but with the half-minus amused squint of someone who knows precisely how curious strangers get pulled inside these walls. Come closer, and you do, stepping over the threshold as though crossing into another pocket of time. At her elbow, a wide shallow bowl of dough sits beneath a cloth. When she lifts it, the warm, yeasty perfume greets you first. Softer than wine, sturdier than air. Her fingers press into the dough with the confidence of 1,000 repetitions. Fold, press, turn. Fold, press, turn. Era them older than any empire, older perhaps than any empire's memory. On a brazier, a small pan glimmers with melted butter, catching the morning light like a secret. She tears off a ball of dough, rolls it flat with the heel of her hand, then folds it around a crumble of soft cheese, a curd so fresh it squeaks when pressed between thumb and forefinger. With another fold, the cheese disappears into the pocket, and the pocket becomes a pillow sealed at the edges with a quick pinch and a sigh. You watch as she lays it onto the pan. A whisper of steam rises where butter meets dough. A quiet promise that something good is about to happen if only you wait a moment longer. She flips it once, twice. The bread puffs and darkens in places, the scent deepening from flour to toast to something richer, almost nutty. You realize your mouth has fallen slightly open when she cuts you a glance and lifts a brow, as if to say patience. And so you close your mouth and tuck your hands behind your back, a child again in the face of something both simple and sacred. When it's done, she places it on a scrap of cloth, sprinkles a pinch of ground nigella seeds across its warm, blistered surface, then folds the cloth around it like a letter sealed for your pocket. Then, and so you do, tear off a corner, the steam curling up to touch your cheek before drifting skyward to join the city's waking breath. Inside, the cheese has melted into itself, salty and soft, tangled up with the faint sharpness of the seeds. It tastes like a secret breakfast, the kind you'd never think to ask for but now cannot imagine starting a day without. Behind you, the courtyard hums with another hush of footsteps. Children darting past, a bucket tipping over, laughter ricocheting off stone. The woman is already shaping another ball of dough for the next visitor. The next morning, the next quiet hunger answered. You step back through the doorway, the bread parcel warm against your palm. The alley has grown brighter now, sun trailing its fingers down the walls, stirring shadows awake. You pause, there for a moment, half in the cool, half in the warmth, and breathe in the simple truth of this lost breakfast: bread, cheese, and the promise that some things survive simply because they are too good not to. And when you step back into the street, you carry it with you, its warmth, its salt, its soft edges folded around a bit of a dream you might not fully understand, but you trust it all the same. You move through the waking streets, still cradling that secret bread in your hand, warm enough to remind you it was made just for you, or someone like you, some other wanderer drawn by scent and happenstance. The city opens a little more with each turn, shutters creak, doors sigh on old hinges. A rooster crows as if late to its own appointment with dawn. Your feet find a wider road, this one lined with low wooden stalls piled with greens that look as though they were plucked straight from the mountain's hem. Cucumbers beaded with dew, wild herbs still trailing bits of earth, dark minus leaves, spinach heavy with morning mist. But today your eye is caught by something else: a yellow table hidden behind a stack of mint, where a man kneels on a woven mat, tending to small bowls that gleam in the half-minus light. He notices you at once. People like you are easy to spot here. Ed's tilted at the unfamiliar, breath caught on the cusp of asking, "What is that?" He grins, and with a wave of his broad, Olive minus stained hand beckons you closer. The bowls are copper, burnished by touch and flame. Within them, glistening cubes of something pale and trembling rest on fresh fig leaves. You lean closer. He plucks a bit with his fingertips. No spoons here, not for him, and offers it like a gift, a square of something between butter and cheese, with tiny beads of whey shimmering on its surface. You hesitate, so he laughs, say low, rolling sound that folds the morning around you like a cloak, and with a small gesture to his own mouth, eats a piece first, as if to say, see. No tricks, only delight. So you taste, that dissolves before your teeth quite know what to do. Creamy tart, with the ghost of smoke and a sweetness that blooms at the edges of your tongue. He tells you its name in words that slip through your thoughts like river water. Lab NEH strained to silk, pressed just firm enough to hold a shape, kissed with salt and set to rest on fig leaves until the dawn it finds your hands. Beside the cheese, small dishes of olives, bruised purple and green, soaking in oil and wild thyme. He shows you how to eat them together. Pinch of cheese, a tear of flatbread, a single olive. The taste is sharp then mellow. Salt then grass, your mouth waking up to the fact that sometimes breakfast is nothing more than what the earth gives and what the hands keep alive. Nearby, a boy tugs at the man's sleeve, arms full of tiny cucumbers wrapped in fresh vine. The man lifts a handful, nudges them toward you too. Another piece of the morning puzzle you didn't know you were missing. Crisp, cold, their skins snap when you bite down. Like the clean break of dawn into day. You realize standing there that none of this is meant to be grand or ceremonious. There's no silver tray, no polished table, just earthen hands and a promise what grew yesterday can feed today. This was the heartbeat of the empire once, not the sultans and their silk minus robe councils, but small courtyards on woven mats, copper bowls and fig leaves. A morning harvest and a neighbor's hunger answered without question. You thank him with clumsy words that don't quite carry the gratitude, but he seems to understand. He gestures again. Eat, and you do. Tearing your last piece of bread, wrapping it around soft cheese and sharp olives, letting your tongue memorize the story so your mind can forget, trusting your belly to keep the memory safe. Behind you, the road fills with more feet, merchants with baskets, women with clay jugs balanced against hips swaying to a rhythm older than any empire. Voices braid together above your head. Laughter and barter and birdsong, and for a moment you stand there in the swirl of it all, still and full, a small conspirator in the daily magic of losing nothing to time except your hurry. You turn away at last, wiping your fingertips against your sleeve, the taste of fig leaves and lab NEH clinging to your breath like a secret you're glad to carry. And somewhere up the street, the next smell waits, sweet, maybe, or savory, or both. There's always another taste in this city of lost breakfasts. Always another corner with something warm waits for a curious hand. Your path winds on feet brushing dust into the folds of your hem. Mine already half minus drunk on sultan milk in the hush of early sun. Curling toward a row of buildings that lean so close you could press your palm to both walls at once. Here, the scent shifts. Gone is the fresh green tang of herbs and milk here. The air turns deeper, richer, darker, the unmistakable promise of something spiced and slow minus cooked, clinging to the morning like an old song. You pause by a wooden door propped open with a wedge of stone. Inside, a single brazier set low to the ground, and above it, a shallow pan barely larger than your spread hand. Amen crouches by the coals, coaxing the embers with a scrap of palm leaf. The pan sizzles soft and steady, carrying to you a scent that makes her belly tighten all over again. Lamb or goat, perhaps, but made humble by time and spice, coaxed tender long before the city woke. You slip inside, a hush of footsteps over packed earth. The walls are stained with the breath of 1,000 mornings, smoke curled into plaster, laughter and complaints drifting up to the rafters to live there forever. A pot bubbles beside the brazier, steam curling around a cloth cover. The man nods at you wordless invitation. He lifts the cloth, and the air blooms with cinnamon and cumin, black pepper and something sweet, sharp as sun on stone. Inside the pot is so soft you wonder if the meat remembers it was once muscle and bone. He spoons a ladle's worth into a clay bowl, tears a strip of bread with one hand. Always bread, always the patient friend at every Ottoman table, and dips it for you, handing it over like a secret. The bread drinks the broth in seconds, goes limp in your hand, dares you to take it whole before it falls apart. You do. You always do. The taste gentle heat first, then a slow climb of warmth that spreads behind your ribs like a second sun. Meat gives way with no protest, just the hum of spice to remind you that a cook's patience is the real emperor here. No feast halls, no silver trays. Just a brazier, a good pot, and a promise kept from goat to hand to mouth. He gestures for you to sit. You fold yourself onto a cushion that sighs beneath your weight, legs tucked close to the warmth. Around you, the little shop comes to life. A boy enters with a clay jug balanced on his shoulder, its neck dark with oil. Another man carries in baskets of onions, garlic, lemons stacked like coins. There's no hurry, every move is measured, a choreography older than the empire's oldest law. The stew bubbles on, unconcerned with the waking city outside. You take another bite, this one softer still, spice just enough to remind you you're alive, but sleepy enough to whisper you could dream here, if only the cushion would allow it. A wedge of lemon waits nearby. Pinch it, squeeze, let the acid cut through the fat like dawn through mist. You obey, and the broth wakes up all over again, bright, bracing, the final secret of a dish that never needed gold leaf or ceremony to feel like a crown. A pair of women slip inside, heads covered in light cotton scarves, laughter hidden behind sun Midas-browned hands. They sit opposite you, and the man serves them to no different from you, no different from the last, no different from the next. Each bowl the same, each smile quiet, each bite a promise that what you share here will live longer than any sultan's decree. A scrap of cloth for your fingers, a nod for your thanks. You wipe your lips, gather your lines, and step back into the street. Still warm somewhere below your ribs, a glow that will carry you through this winding maze of stone and smell. Above you, the sky softens toward full day. A minaret's shadow slips across your shoulder, and still the road bends onward, each corner sharper with scent, each doorway another memory waiting to rise on steaming coals, and the hush of voices sharing the oldest secret there is. What we eat at dawn says who we are when dusk comes. You breathe in, tasting cinnamon on your tongue, feeling the pull of something sweet just ahead. A rumor of pastry, maybe, or sugar drawn thin as glass. This morning isn't done with you yet. Not by a long way. You step from the warmth of the Stu-Minus house back into the drifting morning air. Your fingers still smell faintly of lamb fat and pepper. Your breath carries a ghost of citrus. Somewhere overhead, pigeons will lazy arc surround a minaret's slender spire, as if the day itself can't quite decide whether to lift or linger. You wander on. The street broadens just enough to let in a spill of sun, and you find yourself trailing a caravan of shadows, donkeys, sacks, broad-minded shouldered men laughing beneath wide hats. Their footsteps lead you toward the smell that caught you back at the Stu-Minus house door, sugar, unmistakable now, carried on a breeze that knows all the best secrets of this city. You round a corner and there it is, a low stall, half in the street, half swallowed by the wall behind it. Brass raised balance in a tilt, each one loaded with spirals of pastry so fine you deece would they de-shattered, if you so much as exhaled. A glisten under lattice of syrup that drips slow as morning honey, catching the sunlight and tossing it back in shards of gold. A boy not much taller than the table balances on a crate behind it, his hands moving with the ease of someone who's been doing this since he was old enough to reach the counter. He flicks syrup over the pastries from a battered copper pot, each sweet neat, each drop precise. When he sees you watching, he grins an unspoken dare. Go on, take one. See if you can stop at just one. You step closer. The pastries are coiled tight as a sultan's secret layers of dough so thin you can read the day's gossip through them, wrapped around crushed nuts, fragrant with butter that somehow smells richer here than in any palace kitchen. You point. He nods, pinches one free, tucks it onto a scrap of parchment, and holds it out, palm up like an offering. You pinch it between thumb and forefinger. It's warm. Of course, it's warm. These things always wait for you half minus finished, half minus dreaming of the moment. They melt between tongue and teeth. The first bite shatters the silence inside your head. Crunch, sweet, then the slow melt of syrup pooling behind your teeth. Pistachio oil. Green and sharp, hidden deep inside, as if the pastry is whispering you have to earn the good part. The boy's grin widens. He knows. They always know. Behind him, a man leans against the doorframe, broad arms folded, eyes half minus lidded with that look you see on old cats and old bakers alike, equal parts sleepy and all minus seeing. He lifts his chin in greeting, flicks a crumb from his sleeve, and gestures at the trays lined up like treasure ramen here. Walnut there, some drizzled with rosewater so faint you'd think you dreamed it. He doesn't push you to buy more. He knows you will. So you do another coil, this one heavier with nuts, darker syrup. A scatter of crushed sesame. You slip coins onto the table. He waves off the last one. A gift, he says with a tilt of his chin, for a traveler who knows how to stand still long enough to taste the morning. You lean your back against the warm wall, pastry in hand, syrup threatening to run down your wrist if you're not quick. The street hums around you, donkey bells, soft haggling, a shout of greeting that bounces off limestone like laughter. You stand there, half in shadow, half in sun, biting slow. Letting the sugar seep into your bones like a promise you'll carry all the way to dusk. Behind you, the boy flips another tray onto a low table, fresh coils waiting their turn under the copper pot. Syrup drips, steam rises, and the city drifts on around you, as if it barely notices one more dreamer leaning on its walls. But you notice, of course you do. You taste every layer, every grain, every note of nut and blossom and honey that says yes. The empire rose and fell and rose again, but he rose. Right here it's still sweet, still warm, still yours. You wipe your fingers on the parchment, tuck the last bite between your teeth, and push yourself off the wall. Your steps drift from sugar back toward spice, from warmth into a street that pulls you deeper into the belly of the morning. The sun lifts higher now, brushing gold onto the flat roofs overhead, roofs where a stray cat might lounge beside a stack of clay pots, where a basket of dried figs might wait for someone to remember it. But you're not thinking of cats or figs. Not yet. Because the smell has changed again. Less sweet now, more daring. A curl of charcoal smoke threads through the air, pulling you like a string toward a tiny shop wedged so tight between its neighbors you'd miss it if you wear it following your nose. Inside, if you can call it inside, since the door is no more than a curtain of canvas weighing in the breeze. A brazier glows hot enough to scare off the chill that clings stubbornly to the morning. Over the coals, a narrow iron griddle rests on 3 blackened stones. And on that griddle, flat, sizzling, browned at the edges, rests your next secret. A circle of dope off just enough to promise softness, dotted here and there with sesame seeds that snap under heat. The man behind the brazier doesn't glance up at first. H.E.S. too busy spinning dough between his palms. Stretch, slap, twist, stretch again. Moving with a rhythm so steady you could set your heartbeat to it. His hands flick a brush across the surface oil, spiced so faintly it takes you a second to catch it. Zadar, maybe, or a whisper of sumac. Something sharp enough to wake your tongue, but gentle enough not to argue with the morning. He slides the fresh round onto the griddle beside its older sibling, which he flips with a flick of his wrist. The edges hiss in protest, the middle bubbles soft. And the smell is half bread, half garden, half something you can't name but would follow anywhere. He sees you then finally, eyes crinkling over a beard the color of storm clouds. He doesn't say a word, just lifts a corner of the finished bread, splits it deftly with a blunt knife, and tucks something inside curls of white cheese, crumbly and damp, flecked with herbs you can't quite place. He folds it shut like a letter and holds it out to you across the brazier's heat. The warmth hits your palm first, then your nose. Then the soft weight settles in your hand like an unspoken promise that the world, for at least one bite, is simple bread, cheese, a dusting of spice, and your own breath turning to steam above the coals. You bite. Of course you do. The bread tears tender. The cheese sighs into the warm pocket it's trapped inside. There's a brightness there, mint maybe, or the sharpness of fresh wild greens pulled from a garden before the sun bakes their edges dry. The oil leaves a kiss on your lips, the sesame snaps between your teeth. You close your eyes, just for a heartbeat. The street forgets you for a moment. Donkeys clop past, traders haggle. A woman argues gently with her neighbor about the price of eggs to stalls down. But you rat the brazier? It's just you and the man with the storm Midas-colored beard and the soft circle of bread that tastes like something your ancestors would recognize if they could stand here beside you now. When you open your eyes, HES already started another. This one is for someone behind you, a child by the sound of it, feet scuffing shyly on the packed dirt. The man flicks a smile at you that says you've had yours. Now move along, let the next dreamer taste what you've just tasted. So you do. You step aside, slip coins onto the battered tin that serves as a counter, and duck back through the canvas flap. The street folds around you again, cool air kissing the oil from your fingertips, the spice still warming your tongue. The smell of coffee waits thick, dark, promising a bitterness that will curl around the sweetness in your mouth and make it sing. But that's later. For now, you drift. Full enough to slow down. Curious enough to keep walking. The empire wakes around you, layer by layer, bread by bread, dream by dream, and you. Lucky guess that you are, taste every crumb. Your feet carry you on, deeper into the labyrinth that unrolls beneath the Ottoman sun, alleys that flicker between hush and hum, doorways that leak warmth, gossip, and smoke in equal measure. You pass under a narrow arch where pigeons scatter at your side, their wings brushing your shoulder like a half-minus forgotten blessing. There's a hush here now, a hush that settles low in your chest as you drift toward the next hidden treasurest, all that isn't reallyist all so much as an idea, part courtyard, part corner, part rumor that lives on the tongues of merchants and mothers alike. If you wear it following the scent, earthy, nutty, with a curl of something roasted so slow it almost tastes sweet, you'd think you'd taken a wrong turn. But you haven't. Not today. Ahead, a single copper pot squats in a nest of coals, its belly round as a promise. Beside it, a boy no older than the scent of the morning itself rocks on his heels, eyes bright in the glow as he watches the slow dance of heated grain. In the pot, wheat bubbles lazily in milk, tiny pearls drifting up and down like they're trying to escape the warmth but know better than to run. This is Boza in one of its quiet guises, an old drink, older than the empire itself. Today, it's not the drink you expect, the cold frothy cup carried through winter nights. Here, the grains are coaxed and stirred, cooked down into something closer to a pudding's low food for slow mornings, meant to stick to your ribs and keep your bones humming through the dawn chill. You hover near the coals and the boy pretends not to see you, though the corners of his mouth betray him. He knows you're here for what's in that pot. Every pilgrim to this corner is. He tilts a wooden spoon, lifts a drop to taste, and nods once, quick and proud. Then he dips a small copper ladle, pours the steaming mix into a clay bowl no larger than your two palms cupped together. He gestures silent invitation. And you crouch down beside him because somehow this moment wants you closer to the ground. The air down here is scented with hay and sweet milk and the faint tang of toasted barley. He sprinkles a pinch of cinnamon across the surface, just enough to paint the steam with warmth. You take it carefully, this small bowl of warmth. You blow, because that's what you'd do if your grandmother were here. Clucking at you not to scorch your tongue. You taste. It is remarkably both simple and clever wheat swollen fat with milk, sweetened only by the slow heat and the patience of whoever first thought to stand over a fire until breakfast thickened into something that could carry you through a morning's labor. A handful of crushed nuts sprinkle across the top. Hazelnuts, maybe, or walnuts if you're lucky. They catch between your teeth, snap and surrender in the same breath. Each spoonful lands with a soft weight in your belly and old-fashioned hush. The kind that makes the city's clamor blur for a heartbeat. You could linger here, beside this tiny brazier, shoulder to shoulder with the boy whose eyes dart between you and the pot, already planning the next batch. But you won't. You're too much in motion now, pulled along by the promise of whatever waits beyond the next corner. So you finish. You thank him with the smallest nod. He answers with a grin that says, I know, come back tomorrow. You will if you can find this corner again. You step out of the hush, back into the weave of the market. Your feet carry the warmth of the bowl within, a secret pulse in your chest that says once upon a time, breakfast was't rush or noise. But a slow stirring under coals, a soft hush before the day swallowed you whole, and now the day stretches wider. You catch a new scent on the air, more daring this time, vinegar, herbs, something sharp enough to lift you from milk and grain and cinnamon. You follow, of course you do. Past the hush of coals and milk, your steps quicken, as if the sweetness behind you has left your tongue wanting a sharper edge. And the street, obliging as ever, gives it to you just around the bend, where the crowd gathers not around a pot but a great battered copper cauldron half-minus buried in embers, its rim seared dark from seasons of the same ritual. A man stands guard here, though guard isn't quite right. H.E.S. Moore conductor, arms wide, sleeves rolled, voice weaving through the morning air like smoke from the coals. Every so often he laughs, a sound that startles pigeons and toddlers alike, then settles back into the rhythm of his ladle striking the pot's side with a muted thunk. Inside, something stirs that smells like both feast and famine. Sour, hearty, carrying a bite of vinegar that teases your nostrils and makes your tongue coil in anticipation before you even know what you're asking for. You drift closer. The conductor, cook, keeper, craftsman, spots you at once, eyes crinkling as he sees the way your shoulders lean forward, the tilt of your head betraying your hunger before your mouth does. He dips his ladle deep and brings up a swirl of steaming broth, studded with small, soft lumps that bob and turn the rising steam. This is tarhane, or rather, a soup born from tarhana's cunning. The Ottomans, never ones to waste, dyed yogurt and flour into bricks of fermented soreness that slept on pantry shelves until cold mornings demanded they wake up. Here, they dissolve into broth, coaxed into life with garlic, onions, and the sharp tang of vinegar, turning scarcity into comfort with every swirl of the ladle. You accept the bowl. Clay again, always clay, the kind that remembers heat better than your hands ever could. The first sip shocks you awake. Sour enough to tighten the back of your jaw, yet so warm and familiar, you forgive it instantly. Bits of broken bread float near the surface, little rafts to ferry the tongue across your tongue. Somewhere beneath the vinegar, a whisper of mint, the hush of dried peppers, a hum of salt. You stand there, bowl in hand, shoulder pressed to the stall's rough ember, and drink like someone who hasn't eaten in days. No one rushes you. They know. Around you, others cradle their bowls. Heads bowed not in prayer but in something close this soft, communal submission to warmth and soreness in the way hunger quiets when met with old recipes that don't need permission to soothe. When you reach the bottom, the last sip is stronger sediment and softened crumbs and the tang that bites back once more before letting go. You tip the bowl to catch every drop because wasting this feels like telling the morning you don't care for its gifts. You hand it back, your thanks caught in the steam that ghosts between you and the cook's easy grin. He only nods, wipes the rim clean, ladles for the next pair of hands waiting behind you. The street pulls you forward again past the clink of coins, the hush of spoons scraping clay, the lingering sigh of vinegar that will sit on your breath long after the sun climbs higher. Ahead, the air shifts again, heat rising, oil spitting. Something meteor waiting to test your resolve. You pause, tongue still humming from the soup's touch, and wonder how much room your morning is left. Spoiler, always more than you think. You carry the ghost of that Tarhanes ornis with you, like a secret tucked behind your teeth. As the street draws you deeper into the hum and sizzle of what comes next. The cold dawn is giving way to a different heat, one born of fire and fat, a warmth that clings to your sleeves, unsettles in your hair whether you wish it or not. It's not hard to find the source. The smoke tells you first, gray ribbons rising from squat braziers lined up along the road like brazen sentinels. And above them skewers, dozens of them, metal spears balancing precious mouthfuls of something that hisses and drips as the fat meets flame. Kebabs. But not the grand banquet kind. Not dripping with lavish spices or wrapped in ritual pomp. These are the humble cuts, bits of liver, scrap ends of offal, odds and ends from yesterday's butcher's table that might have found their way to the dogs, if not for a clever cook's sigh and a people's stubborn refusal to waste a single scrap. The man tending the coals barely looks at you as you drift near. He is too busy flicking his wrist just so, spinning the skewers in tidy. Patient half-minus turns so each bite drinks in the heat equally. Every few moments he leans closer, breathing the smoke like it's a prayer. Brushing the meat with a whisper of melted fat that flares in the coals with a sigh. You find a place near the edge, careful not to press too close, though your hunger does its best to betray you. The smoke curls under your nose, carrying hints of cumin and pepper, maybe a brush of sumac if you're lucky enough to wake that old animal part of your mind that knows exactly what to do when meat meets fire. You nod once, and without a word he lifts a skewer from the brazier, slides it onto a slab of flatbread torn straight from the stack under his elbow. A sprinkle of salt. A flick of herbs, parsley maybe, or mint if the season's been kind. That's all. Nothing more because the fire has done most of the work already. You tear off your first bite while the iron's heat still lingers in the meat. It's rough, a little chewy where the liver edges crisped against the flames, but so warm and yielding in the middle that your teeth forgive the char instantly. The bread soaks up the drippings, salty, smoky, flecked with the tiny burnt edges that tell you this was no quick fry minus up but a slow coaxing of flavor from a cut that needed time to become something worth your patience. Around you, the other early risers do the same, shoulders hunched, sleeves pulled back, eyes half-minus lidded in that universal expression of a hunger briefly silenced. It's not grand. It's not delicate. It is exactly what you need it to be enough. When the last shred of bread carries away the final drop of fat, you set the skewer aside. The cook is already turning another batch, eyes never leaving the flame. The small mountain of wood coals glowing a steady red beneath his care. You stand there for a moment longer, the taste of liver still warm against your tongue, the smoke stitching itself into the fibers of your coat like an invisible souvenir you'll carry for hours. Then the street calls you forward again, past the spit and hiss of the braziers, past the soft crackle of bread warming at the edges, toward the next promise the morning holds. Something sweet maybe, or spiced, or something unexpected that waits just around the bend, ready to remind you that an Ottoman dawn never empties its table all at once. You pull your coat closer, the chill already gentled by the warmth in your belly, and step back into the drift of voices, smoke, and the quiet certainty that breakfast is far from over. By now, the streets have begun to soften under the sun's gentle insistence, but your path has not yet abandoned the shadows. The last taste of liver and charcoal still hums in your chest as you follow the threads of something sweeter, a promise your senses catch before you even know its name. There is a corner ahead, marked by a low awning and a string of battered copper kettles hanging like brass bells. The clatter shifts no more the crackle of coals or the slap of dough, but the muted clink of tiny cups and the hush of steam that curls upward from squat pots tended with almost priestly care. Men sit on those tools, heads bent close to the table, and in their hands are cups no bigger than your palm, brimming with liquid darker than ink, thicker than any water you've ever known. The smell is unmistakable coffee. Ottoman coffee, thick as night. A drink that asks for your patience and repays you with its quiet strength. But this is not just a cup to sip and flee. Here, the coffee is a ceremony. The CEVA handled pot, with a belly rounder than any wine jars that's half-Midas buried in a bed of hots, and that hisses faintly as the copper nestles deeper. The man tending this ritual does so with slow, deliberate circles, lifting the pot just before it boils over, lowering it again, coaxing the ground's unwater and sugar out. Yes, sugar, if you ask for it into a thick, silken swirl that settles in the cup like a small storm come to rest. You find your place among the quiet company of other morning pilgrims. A cup appears before you, balanced on a delicate saucer, its tiny handle no more than a suggestion. There is no rush here. The surface shimmers with the faintest froth, a crown earned by patience alone, and you lift it to your lips as if greeting an old friend. It is strong, more bitter than sweet, though a sly edge of sugar slides in just at the end to remind you, this is not punishment but reward. The grounds slip across your tongue, settling at the bottom in a dark secret you do not disturb. This is not a drink for haste. You sip, then pause. Sip again. Let your eyes drift across the street, half-Midas listening to the hush of stories traded over porcelain rims. And beside the cups, never far, sits another delight come. Turkish delight, though to call it only that feels like telling half a truth. Here, it comes in squares dusted with fine sugar, their centers yielding under your bite like soft jewels hidden in snow. Rosewater, pistachio, maybe even pomegranate if the cook was feeling extravagant this dawn. Each piece is a small, polite luxury, a sweetness to balance the weight of the coffee's darkness. Together they form a tiny kingdom at your fingertips. The cup, the saucer, the delicate sweet that leaves your fingers powdered and your breath just faintly floral. You could stay here forever, listening to the quiet tap of cups set down, the low murmur of traders and scholars and sleepy porters sharing news they half-Midas rust and half-Midas invent. But the cup empties, as all good things must, and you leave the last swirl of grounds where they belong at the bottom, a dark pool in which someone, somewhere, might claim to see your future. But you don't ask. Not today. Today, the present is enough. When you rise, the kettle man nods once, and you nod back. Your pockets lighter by a few coins, but your veins carrying the bright hum of caffeine and sugar. And when the street welcomes you again, your feet feel a little less heavy, your eyes a little more ready for what the next turning might hold. Because breakfast in this empire is not a single act. It is a procession, a promise that the sun will keep climbing, the kettles will keep whispering, and your hunger will always find a place at the fire. The morning has uncurled itself into full light now, but you, stubborn soul that you are, refuse to retreat home just yet. Your steps wander deeper, pulled by a rumor you heard whispered near the bread of Anze, a rumor about a breakfast so hidden, so fiercely local, that it barely survives outside this one crooked alleyway behind the spice bazaar. You slip past crates of cumin and strings of dried mint, the air so heavy with pepper and rose petals that your nose tingles. At last you find the tiny wooden counter, wedged between a tanner's door and a window draped in drying herbs. There's no signabird, just the smell and perfume of fat and sweetness dancing together in the narrow gap of dawn. Here they make caimac, no ordinary clotted cream, but a wonder born of patience and the softest milk a buffalo can give. In the quiet backrooms of the empire, farmers coax this rich white velvet from pans left to cool, under the watchful eye of the kitchen moon. When the cream thickens just enough to stand on its own, it is cut into slabs like a small white cheese and laid carefully into shallow dishes of honey. The man behind the counter doesn't ask you what you want. He only gestures to an empty stool beside a young porter who's already lost in a dream of breakfast, a spoon scraping a shallow dish clean. Before you can wonder at it, your own plate appears. A los ulcer where a pillow of caimac rests beneath a pool of golden honey that gleams as the sunlight slips over your shoulder. You lean forward, a spoon trembling in your hand. One careful scoop. Too much, and it will tumble. Too little, and you will taste nothing at all. The moment it hits your tongue, the world slows. It is cool, soft, impossibly rich. The honey's warmth cuts through the cream's hush like sunlight spilling into a dark room. It is not loud. It does not brag. It simply exists, perfect and fleeting. Beside it, a small wedge of bread, something yeasty and warm, crust torn open by your own impatient fingers. You drag it through the honeyed cream. Watch it drop escape down your wrist. No one minds. Here, manners dissolve in the face of good cream. You look up. The street behind you still hums sellers calling, donkey's braying, the copper clatter of coins and curses and laughter, but here, at this narrow counter, time pauses. The man who makes the caimac glances over once, checks the shine of your dish, nods as if to say, good. You understand. There are no menus, no choices. Just this cream, honey, bread, and your own soft hum of gratitude. A boy elbows past, balancing a tray with 4 more plates, just like yours, bound for the merchants hunched under the spice stalls. They lead it quickly, chasing sweetness with coffee and gossip before vanishing into the day. But you give it another moment. You drag the last crumb through the slick of honey and lick your spoon clean as if it were made of gold. And then, just like that, it's gone. The plate is empty. Your fingers sticky, the porter beside you already slipping away into the bizarre swirl of voices. You stand, slide your coins across the battered wood. The caimac man lifts his chin in farewell, already turning to slice the next slab from a pan that shimmers with pale promise. You step back into the street, tongue still sweet, pockets a little lighter, and you know somewhere, far beyond these crooked stalls, this taste will linger, a soft secret you carry in your mouth for the rest of the day. Breakfast is not done yet. Not for you. Not here. You drift now from sweetness back to salt, your tongue still painted with honey, but your mind restless for something sharper, something that crackles against your teeth and reminds you that breakfast is no single course but a restless parade of flavors, each vying for your fleeting devotion. A street corner unrolls before you like a theater stage, battered tables, an old iron pot puffing clouds of fragrant steam, and a man with arms like tree trunks tending to something hidden under the bubbling foam. You hover, drawn closer by the gentle chant of metal on metal, a slotted spoon tapping the pot's rim in a rhythm older than any clock tower in the city. It is this can be Corbus striped soup, beloved by drunkards staggering home before dawn and merchants who've bartered too hard for too long. Not quite what you expected for breakfast. Perhaps, but here in the Empire's veins, soup does not wait for the polite hour of lunch. It arrives when the body demands warmth and the tongue craves courage. You sit where you can see the pot's belly quiver. The man behind it nods at you, no words, just the universal gesture of you look hungry. He lifts the lid. Steam gusts out, clouding your face in a fog that smells of garlic and vinegar and slow-simmered bones. He ladles it into a deep bowl, drops in a wedge of lemon, slides it across the scarred table. You pinch the rim between your palms, feel its heat settle into your skin. The first spoonful is tender tripe cleaned, boiled, chopped small enough to slip through your lips without protest. The broth is silky, seasoned with garlic pounded to paste in vinegar strong enough to weight the back of your throat. There is salt, of course, always salt anchoring every mouthful to the earth you stand on. You squeeze the lemon in a lazy spiral, watch the fat bead of oil fracture and swirl. The tiny ocean under your spoon. Ash of dried mint flickers green on the pale surface, the final blessing before the second bite. This time, you taste more than broth, you taste the rough promise of the animal that gave this piece a belly, the patience of the cook who woke before you ever dreamed of stirring. Beside you, a young boy slurps from his bowl, eyes closed, feet swinging off the bench. Across the table, a trader with an embroidered sash sprinkles extra salt, cracks his knuckles, and sighs the sigh of a man whose head no longer aches quite so badly. A ladle clangs. Another bowl appears. The pot never empties. It only waits for the next weary soul. Here, nobody rushes. You could stay until the sun crawls halfway up the city's domes, watching the streets well with footsteps and barter. Your bowl refilled if you ask. Your spoon never taken until you tap it clean against the side, a quiet signal that you're ready to face the day again. When you do stand, you feel the warmth of the broth settle deep in your belly like an ember. The taste lingers at the corners of your mouth, vinegar bright, garlic low and loyal. A soup that reminds you that the body must be fed honestly if the mind is to wander. A coin links into a tin. The cook gives you a nod, no smile, no thanks. Just the silent promise that tomorrow or tomorrow's tomorrow, there will be soup waiting for you again. And so you step away, your mouth a strange harmony of honey and salt and something tougher that stays behind your teeth. Breakfast is a long road here. The soup is only one bend along its path. You slip away from the street corner, your breath trailing faint clouds as the city stirs more boldly around you. The trip's warmth glows in your belly like an ember tucked beneath layers of wool. Yet the morning has more to give wool. This city never sends you home half fed. You find yourself drawn by a smell as sly as a fox, smoke mingled with something unmistakably sweet, almost burnt but not quite. It clings to your sleeves as you pass an alleyway and catches you by the wrist, tugging you sideways toward a stone arch where the scent grows thicker. Inside the arch, half shaded by a slanted canvas, a man stands over a brazier. On his board rests a slab of pale dough, glistening with butter so generous you almost pity the fire it's about to meet. A thin, flaky pastry older than many of the bricks in the walls around you, each sheet brushed with clotted cream and sprinkled with pistachio until it threatens to melt before your eyes. He works fast. The vendor, a flick of the wrist here, a fold there like watching someone handle silk in a windstorm. He lifts the pastry, settles it onto the hot plate. It hisses like a snake disturbed from sleep. The smell deepens, Caramel, butter, a suggestion of green pistachio warmth. In this city, sweetness never arrives plain, it arrives dressed in fat and fire. A bite that says good morning and don't you dare forget it. You stand close enough to feel the heat lap your knuckles. He turns the cat mare with wide iron tongs, brow furrowed as if the pastry might whisper secrets only he can hear. The edges crisp to gold. A scatter of extra nut showers the top like confetti at a sultan's parade. A slip of paper, a flat tin plate, and into your hands it goes, still so hot you juggle it awkwardly between your palms. You tear off a corner. Feel the layers sigh apart. Watch the butter pulse free. The first bite is all warmth and sugar and pistachio grit. It flakes onto your lips, crumbles down your sleeve. You can't keep it neat. And that is exactly the point. Beside you, a pair of apprentices devour their own catmare, laughter muffled behind sticky fingers. An old woman dips hers in a cup of bitter coffee. Balance is everything here. Sweet meets bitter, hot meets dark, all wrapped in the morning's lazy hush. Another bite, then another. By the time you reach the last golden scrap, your tongue buzzes with the hush of melted sugar. Your throat hums with butter's heavy promise. If you're wise, you'll hold this taste gently, let it stick to your fingertips as proof that a morning begun with sugar is a morning that can forgive anything. You nod to the vendor. No words, just the respectful tilt of someone who knows they'll be back tomorrow. And you will be. The city makes a quiet vow with each pastry folded and flipped. You'll always be welcome to wander, to taste, to stand by the brazier as your days sweeten crumb by crumb. Stepping back into the street, you let the city's hum fold around you again. The dawn has matured. The alley has given up its secrets, but your pockets hold pistachio dust and the aftertaste of a sweetness that has no patience for moderation. Breakfast is far from finished, but for a moment, it's enough to stand there, your palms still warm, your breath still slow. You promise yourself you'll come back not just for the pastry, but for the hush, the flicker of the flame. The silent oath between cook and wanderer that morning is best when it tastes like this. You drift further down the narrow street, your fingertips brushing a low stone wall, still warm from the baker's fire leaking through it. The city wakes more fully now. Merchants rattle open shutters, pigeons mutter in the eaves, and the distant chant of a street peddler winds through the morning air, like a thread you can't help but follow. You follow it. Of course you do. It leads you to a corner you've passed 100 times but never really seen. There, beneath a faded awning, crouches a man with a copper pot perched above coals so soft they barely seem awake. His hands move steadily, lifting the lid, stirring with a slotted spoon, revealing a sight so simple yet so rich you blink just to be sure. Rice pudding. Not just any, but sut-lac. That milky, slow-minus simmered whisper of sweetness that slips through centuries unchanged. In the Ottoman's time, it was a palace comfort and a street corner salvation. All at once. Food for the weary, the homesick, the greedy, the young. The man ladles the thick, pale custard into wide, shallow bowls, each portion crowned with a dusting of cinnamon so fine it drifts on the steam like incense smoke. There's only an upturned crate for you to perch on, but somehow it feels like the best seat in the empire. You wrap your fingers around the warm bowl. Beneath the scorched rice skin is cream and sweetness. The hush of milk turned into comfort with nothing more than patience and fire. You draw the spoon through it slowly, feeling it quiver like the first word spoken at dawn. A bite slides across your tongue, delicate, but with a weight that tugs you gently back to every half-minus forgotten childhood, real or imagined. Around you, others do the same, an apprentice with ink stains on his sleeves, a mother with a sleeping baby slung across her chest, a porter hunched over his bowl like it's the last thing in the world that makes sense. For a few quiet mouthfuls, there are no orders barked. No coins counted, no carriages clattering on the stones, just rice, milk, sugar, cinnamon, and breath. This sut-lac holds no ambition except to calm you. No spices shouting over each other, no sour vinegar to sting your tongue. It's the hush between prayers, the hush before you step into the street again and let the noise take you back. The vendor smiles with his eyes more than his mouth, watching your spoon scrape the last soft grains from the edge of the bowl. You want to ask him how long he's been here, how many dawns he's watched crawl over these stones while rice softens in milk at his side. But you don't. Some mornings deserve to stay simple, without too many questions to ruin their magic. You stand. You nod, you hand back the empty bowl, feeling that gentle warmth settle deeper in your chest than any breakfast ought to reach. The air smells different now. Cleaner somehow, though the city grows louder every second. Maybe it's just the cinnamon clinging to your sleeve, a promise that some sweetness can linger long after the bowl is empty. You step back into the street. The crate creaks behind you as the next hungry soul takes your place. Somewhere a crier's voice breaks through the morning, praising fresh lemons. Fresh dates, fresh news. You have more corners to turn, more mouthfuls to meet. But for now, you carry the rice pudding's hush with you, like a hidden ember against the day's noise. And so you walk on. Your hands empty, your belly full, your mind drifting somewhere softer than the city's clamor. The street widens ahead. The air tastes of stone and promise. And the hush, for a moment, is yours alone. By now the city is fully awake, markets heaving with baskets of produce, copper pans clanging, and the faintest shimmer of song drifting from a distant courtyard. You slip through this living maze like a letter slipped under it, or quiet, unnoticed, but very much there. Your feet led you somewhere older than any shop or stall, a courtyard so shaded by plane trees that the morning sun lingers at its edges, unsure whether to intrude. The hush returns, not the hush of milk and rice, but of stone and stories at old Dervish Lodge, once part sanctuary, part school, part kitchen. And kitchens, here, meant more than pots and pans. They were the soft beating heart of the place, a simmering promise that anyone, rich or ragged, could step inside and leave with warmth in their bones. You duck beneath the low archway, toes brushing an uneven stone worn smooth by centuries of slipper-ed feet. The kitchen breathes its same old breath, wood smoke, lentils, herbs that linger like gossip in the air long after the pot's been scraped clean. A woman with wrists strong enough to lift your worries from you stands at the hearth, a long Minas-handled ladle in her hand and a half-smile tucked into the corners of her mouth. In the Ottoman's time, she might have been called Deed, the master cook whose was as much about faith as flavor. On the stone hearth before hers, it's a cauldron wider than your shoulders, its surface trembling with the slow roll of lentils, rice, onions, chickpeas, a simple, humble mixture known as ashur. The nose pudding. Legend says that when the ark finally came to rest on Mount Ararat, Noah and his weary crew gathered every last scrap from their stores and made a pot of this everything left. Boiled together, turned into blessing. You watch her stir each circle of her spoon, pulling you deeper into the swirl of history. In the old kitchens of the empire, ashur was not just food. It was community, ladled into bowls shared with neighbors, passed through open doors, offered to the stranger at your gate. Sweetened with dried fruit, scented with orange peel and rose water. Crowned with a handful of nuts and maybe a secret prayer for peace stuck beneath the almonds. She lifts a wooden spoon to your lips, no bowl this time, just a taste. Warm and soft, each grain holding hands with the next. Sweet, but not cloying. Spiced, but not proud. A hush in every bite, reminding you that sometimes history is not battles or crowns, but a pot large enough to hold everyone, at least for a spoonful. She nods as you savor it, no words pass between you, but her eyes say, yes, this is what survives. Empires rise, sultans fall, marble cracks and gold tarnishes, but someone will always stand by a hearth, stirring ashur, passing it to another. A soft rebellion against the cold edges of the world. You thank her, your voice is smaller than the room, but the warmth in your chest is larger than any palace. Outside the courtyard the street waits, humming with the promises of noon. You step back through the archway, feeling the hush cling to your shoulders like the faint scent of rose water. The city is no quieter than before. Children shout, carts rattle. Somewhere a donkey brayes complaints into the breeze. But you carry that spoonful of lentils, fruits, and prayers tucked behind your ribs, a gentle reminder that sometimes a pot of sweetness is the only crown a city needs. The courtyard slips behind you. The old stone sighs back into silence, and you walk on lighter, softer, ready to listen for the next hush waiting in the noise. At last, the city grows softer again, like a great old cat curling into itself after a long prowl. By now, you've gathered so many tastes, murmurs, and warm spoonfuls that your pockets feel full, even though your hands are empty. Your feet wander you toward a last corner of this dreamy neighborhood where old wooden houses lean against one another for support, shutters half-minus closed against the creeping dusk. There's a hush here too, but it hums more than it sleeps, a hush made of stories told low in promises, tucked into bread dough. You slip through a carved doorway, low enough to make you bow your head, humility by architecture. A narrow kitchen, long enough for 3 people shoulder to shoulder, wide enough for a lifetime of breakfasts. The air is sweet, but not with honey this time, something earthier, deeper, something that tastes of the hillsides and the wind and the stubbornness of seeds. An old baker stands at the end of the room, apron-dusted with flour so fine it glows in the lantern light. He doesn't look up right away, his hands busy with a soft mound of dough he folds and turns, as if tucking secrets into each crease. This is Baslam, a flatbread older than the streets outside. To call it bread is to miss the point. This was breakfast, lunch, traveling companion, offering comfort. When the empire's caravans rolled east or west, they carried Baslam tucked in saddlebags, layered between hope and dried apricots. The old baker gestures, no words needed, and you step closer. He pats a warm round into your waiting palms. Still soft, still sighing steam from its belly. You tear off a piece and tuck it against your tongue. Its warmth telling you more about the empire than any dusty coin or broken marble ever could. Once, a breakfast like this sat between a sultan's palace and a shepherd's tent, with no argument about whose table it belonged to. A smear of fresh cheese, maybe a dab of molasses if luck was sweet that year. Enough to start the day, enough to remind you that hunger can be patient if bread is kind. He nods to a clay pot at the edge of the counter, a whisper of tahini and grape molasses, stirred until they swirl together like dusk and dawn trading secrets. He drags a thumb through the swirl and taps your bread. An invitation to taste the swirl of bitter and sweet, earth and sun, memory and tomorrow. You bite. For a heartbeat, the city fades. The old stories slip from your shoulders. There's just you, the hush, the warm weight of bread that reminds you you're alive in this moment. Simple as it is a kind of empire too unwritten but lasting. When you look up, the baker has already turned back to his dough, folding and turning, folding and turning. His hush is constant as the rise and fall of your breath. You step outside. Night has finally claimed the city, wrapping its streets in a quilt of warm shadows and drifting spice smoke. Somewhere a nightingale tries out a few notes. Somewhere a pot is washed and set back on its shelf, ready for tomorrow's hush. You walk on, your pockets empty but full, your hunger sated but waiting. Behind you, kitchen's close, lamps dim, the hush grows deeper, carrying every breakfast ever tasted and everyone yet to come. Sleep now, friend. The empire dreams, and you, still warm from bread and stories, drift with it. And now hush, yes, that hush again. It slips in like steam rising from a pot left on the coals long after the fire has burned low. Tonight the streets have folded their noise into the seams between stones. The kitchens have emptied of clatter. The spoons have settled. Somewhere far away, a lone lantern flickers above a doorway that never quite closes. You, with crumbs still tucked behind your teeth, you drift softer than the night. The city's old breath cradles you. You dream of brass kettles and wooden ladles, of bread warm enough to carry a prayer, of a pot so wide it holds the whole hush inside. So let the room grow quiet. Let your breath slow. Slower now, like water carrying you deeper than history, softer than marble. The hush is here. You're part of it now. Sleep well, traveler of kitchens and stories. Tomorrow will come. But tonight the Empire stays close, quiet, warm, and waiting. You are exactly where you need to be.